Hello, and I think this is about episode 3. Hopefully that's what it is. So hello, and if you're new here and you haven't seen any of the other episodes of this beginning of my podcast, go back. There is a first one that talks about just welcoming me in and kind of telling you what this whole channel is going to be about. That would be episode 1. Episode 2 is a backstory of like my story, to tell a little bit more. My memories go back to the age of 3, and my gifts go back much probably farther than that, probably several lifetimes. But I talk a lot about that in episode 2. So if you're curious to learn more about when I've talked before about my experiences being an empath and being an energy communicator, that they go all the way back. It tells you a little bit more about me and how I got started and when my awareness happened with my gifts. This episode is supposed to be more about my why, like the heart behind my work. I wrote the little note about what I wanted to make sure I talked about. So one of the things I want to talk about, especially, I keep hearing, especially for the past, so I'll tell you a little tiny bit about me in case you haven't seen any of the other ones. So you're like, what is going on? So I am an energy communicator, and for over 3 decades, I've been working with individuals in person, doing readings, energy attunements, lots of different things for over 30 years. Well, one of the things that has come up a lot actually since I've been doing, and 4 months ago, I started doing TikTok videos, and this is February of 2025. So 4 months ago, I started doing TikTok videos because I was guided by my guides to step outside of my comfort zone and start talking more about sharing my experiences more a public level, because that's another reason why I'm doing this video. This one is my why, because one of the things I have found over the past 4 months especially is so much feedback from people when I started sharing things about my journey and how young it started and started talking about some of my experiences. It triggered a lot of memories in people that are like, oh my gosh, I had the same things going on. I had a lot of very unusual things happening that I didn't understand when I was little. Like I was drawing what I now know as hieroglyphics and all kinds of different languages and symbols that I was drawing from the age of 3 on. Once I had started seeing pictures in an Encyclopedia Britannica about Egypt, ancient Egypt. It lit up. I still get the chills thinking about it. Sorry, I feel like I get so if I do this during this, is literally, I feel the energy. It almost feels like my hair will stand up on top of my head. I feel like I get an energetic mohawk, but that's okay. So in short, I still get the zingles. I call it the zingles. It's zingy tingles. When it's like my spidey senses kick in and it's like, yes. And so I remember looking at the photographs and having memories start coming back where I was literally seeing myself, but not looking like I do right now in different lifetimes. One of the first ones that I started was I was seeing myself as I was a young woman that was in spaces where they would burn the incense and stuff, because when I started going to church with my mother, because she was Catholic, when they would light the incense, which was usually like a mixture of like frankincense and myrrh and stuff, it would trigger memories in me of being somewhere where they would light incense and I would hear singing and chanting and different music and different things. It was bringing back memories. And I had so many of them over the years, especially when I would get my hands on like a National Geographic and I'd see pictures of things about Egypt. One of the biggest ones was the whole big thing down the road. I can't remember if I was about 10, maybe it was around 1980, where they did the whole thing about the King Tut's tomb. And they did this whole big coverage about, maybe it was 70s, when they did it about, they were showing a lot of the treasures that came out of King Tut's tomb. And I had been drawing things. Well, I kept seeing this image of myself as this woman that was in what I now know was in the temple of Isis. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in Alexandria, Egypt. I didn't understand then what it was. I know now. The interesting thing is I'm going through some old photo albums that I had, and I had a photograph of one of the times that my grandmother came to visit me when I was staying with my mom down in Florida. And it's so funny. I can't remember the exact thing. This wasn't a Halloween dress up costume time. If I remember correctly, it had something to do with like cultures around the world or something. And we were supposed to pick one. And I was so insistent on dressing like the woman that I kept seeing myself as in that lifetime. And I found the picture. It doesn't have the year on it. But I swear I'm probably only about 7 to 10 years old, maybe in this picture, maybe younger, about 7. I don't know if you can see that very clearly. But I draped fabric around myself. I remember finding those, it was like a coin belt that I found at a thrift store that had these like coins and things on it. And I was trying to look like, and I even had the armband because the woman had these armbands in my dreams. And I would see these visions even during the day. So, and it's interesting, I found that picture recently and I said, I wanted to share this, especially about my part of my story, because this is part of why I do what I do is for so many years. I mean, I'm going to be 55 in May. This is 2025 that I'm taping this. And there's a lot of these things I have not really spoken about because I was afraid to talk about things that weren't that commonly known. Even in the woo-woo community, a lot of my experiences and things that I have encountered are rare even in that community. And so I was always afraid to talk about things, especially with my connection with the galactics and all of these past life things. Well, one of my missions is to be completely open and transparent about a lot of things because I was experiencing this as a small child. And a lot of people that have been commenting and messaging me directly share that thank you for sharing some of this stuff on the different lives and you talking about, because it's triggering memories of things that happened for them that they felt they were kind of like, I thought I was imagining these things and all of these things. I wanted to make sure that I share this because it's part of my mission. I want to be as open and transparent because I feel there are so many of you out there that are listening that are highly sensitive, highly empathic individuals and have had experiences since you were little. Maybe you had imaginary friends that just because the grown-ups in your life couldn't see them doesn't mean they weren't really there. I know now my imaginary friends were my angels and spirit guides and the different energy spirits that I have met that have literally walked out of trees. And I have connected with, and I'll never forget, I went on a shamanic journey several months back now. And one of the things was going down to lower earth and meeting the rock people. And since I was a child, I knew that rocks have souls. And so they were at least sentient beings, I should say. Let me rephrase that so it makes a little more sense. They have sentient energy. They're sentient energy beings. And I knew this as a child, and I will never forget the feeling of being greeted and told, welcome home. And it reinforced something that even though I hadn't thought about it in such a long time, that connection, I had never shared that openly because people would have thought I was a little cuckoo, right? So I wanted to be able to be completely open and honest about things and share because hopefully somewhere somebody's going to hear those things and feel a little more comfortable about being who they are. And that's like the main part of my heart and the why behind what I do. And so a lot of the things I do, of course, on TikTok, I do readings, I do personal tarot readings, and I do mediumship readings and things like that. But one of the things I want to start being able to do is build a community to help support, encourage, and help empower other empaths to not only be able to learn what your gifts are in the full spectrum of them, but find out ways to be able to embrace them, to enhance your life, not just survive and get through things. There are so many different tips and tricks I'm going to give you that are super easy to do that will help you like lower your anxiety. I know, what a concept, right? Even tools and things that you can use in a public space and people wouldn't know what you were doing is as simple as putting your hand over your heart and taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. There are energy exercises that I'm going to be able to teach you along the way that will be able for you to do something as simple as helping calm your anxiety and lower your energy field, so to speak, in the sense where when you're feeling like an emotionally sunburned individual, I will be able to help you with that. That's a big part of my why. So this podcast was started to be able to deep dive on a lot of things that I get asked questions about all the time, especially people who have loved ones that have passed and they want to be able to communicate. I will have podcast episodes just all about those things, about the medium psychic part of my ability, so to speak. But all of us are able to, that's the other thing I'm going to teach you, that all of us are able to strengthen and reconnect with our loved ones, the connection, and be able to communicate with them a lot more, where we're not just hoping and waiting for signs. I'm going to help you with that. That's another reason and part of my why. But like I said, my biggest thing about this is I want to be completely transparent and open about these things, because if I can't feel safe to share, then it's not fair to everyone else. And believe it or not, and it's funny, this is going to be odd, I am very introverted. I've been like that my whole life. So me being able to get in front of this camera and do these recordings and stuff is usually very hard for me to get started. But once I start, I'm a chatterbox. But I'm excited because my heart's in the right place and I really want to help. And so this is my why. I'm doing that for this me, and then I'm doing it for this me, because this beautiful, sensitive soul was made to believe that it wasn't okay to have all of these thoughts and feelings, and that it wasn't right to do the things that I was doing. And I, if anything comes out of this, I want you to be able to give yourself permission to be everything that you truly are, and how you were born and how you were wired. We're going to talk a lot about that. One of the big things for self-discovery is learning what your soul DNA is, which is an amazing thing. It was something that I had explained to me from my angels many years ago when I was little. Trying to understand how gifts work in some people and why they're not turned on in others and all of these things. And they explained to me that when we as humans are born into this dimension, onto this planet, basically we come in with our human DNA and our soul DNA. And those two basically weave together to create our experience in this lifetime. Now, our human DNA is all of the human DNA, as in our parents and all of the lineage. And it's interesting where that comes into play. It's not just, it's interesting. I will tell you this before I finish the rest of this, to show as an example. So for me, I was born to my mother, and my mother was, my birth father was Hebrew from Israel. This comes into play later when I tell you about one of my main past lives that I keep going back to. And so here was my mom, she was half Italian, half Czechoslovakian. And so there's a lot of play into that. There's a whole thing, if you've ever heard of Moldavite, if you look to see, that was this giant meteor that landed in basically what is now, I guess, the Czech Republic. To me, it's still Czechoslovakia because it's still the old country. I'm thinking from my grandmother, that's where her family came from. There's a play into that, how that's very interesting. But the fact that my father was from a Hebrew from Israel, that DNA needed to come into this lifetime to connect with my soul DNA. Now, what is your soul DNA? Your soul DNA is the DNA. It is the memory bank of every lifetime you've ever had. It is also every energy signature of the energy that created your soul. So a great example is, if you have always, like for me, I used to say, I evenly used to joke, I was a mermaid in a past life, that I am very attuned with the underwater, everything to do with water and ocean. When I was very little, from the time I could just jump in water, I could swim. It was already a part of me. The very interesting thing is, even when I was little, I used to do it where I would lock both ankles and then swim like I had a fin, even when I was little. And I can remember being reprimanded for that because it looked weird. But I was just naturally, when I'm talking, I wasn't even in kindergarten when that started. And it's very interesting. Over the years growing up down there, I can remember I never felt more at home in two different places, as when I was outside on my back porch step at night looking at the stars, and when I was under the water. So because I lived in Miami, when we would go to the beach, I got my first little snorkeling set with the little, with the little goggles and the little snorkel tube thing. And I wasn't even in kindergarten because I remember it was the summer. It was the summer before I started kindergarten was when I got my first set. And once I got under the water and just started going, I can remember once I got under the water and my ears would go under the water, I could just feel, I instantly felt at home. I was so incredibly comfortable, and it was like I was in my own world. So that's part of my soul DNA. I am part of my soul DNA is my aquatic fae. So that's a whole nother day. We'll explain a little more about that. But in short, your soul DNA holds, basically, it's like a memory database of every life you've ever had, every facet of your soul. So if you have different things like angelic DNA, fae, different types of fae DNA, and just to let you know, fae, fairy kingdom and all of that, to understand the depth. There's not 1 or 2, 5 or 6. Just imagine as many different species of animals in the animal kingdom that are out there. That's meant how many different, I don't want to use the term species, but types of, or I guess species of fae that are out there. And so there are many that are aquatic. There are many that are forest, very specific to types of forests in different parts of the world. There is galactic fae. That is a whole nother ball game. That's a hybrid of, it's a galactic being that is a galactic fae. That's how the fae got here in the first place. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But so hopefully you understand a little more about human DNA and soul DNA. And when we're born into this earth, not everything is turned on. Imagine these are all light switches that connect all of those different memories to come in. So some of us, like me, had a lot of that soul DNA that was wide open because I was already drawing as soon as I could draw with, instead of coloring on coloring books, I was usually trying to draw symbols. And I started drawing symbols in a pattern that was, I was drawing them, but instead of drawing one here and going to the next here, I was shown the symbols going in upward pattern. And so I would draw the first symbol and then the next one, and it would intertwine. So when I finished, it just looked like a big design, but it was actually, I was seeing each of the symbols in this pattern because they would always show me those very specific, which I now know are these different sacred symbols or light language. They were showing them to me, but they were done in a pattern where I could see them in a 3-dimensional form. Yeah, so I was doing that kind of stuff when we were little. Hopefully that explains a little more about that. So yeah, and I will deep dive, I promise. I'm going to do a whole episode just on soul DNA and how you can actually turn some of these things on. So if you've had experiences where you feel like, say you go to a place you've never been to before. Like I went to England for the first time in 2017. I will tell you, since the time I was 5, every time I read a story that characters were based there, I felt a connection. When I went to England for the first time in 2017, it was like going home. And because I've had so many lifetimes over there, and I've had many different times where I walked into spaces and I felt like I had already been there before, because you probably have. These are past life memories. You just don't know the full story, but that's because it's all in your soul DNA. And there's a way to access that database to be able to pull from it resources, because there are many things that you will not have to learn in this lifetime, but you will get to remember, that you will be able to tune in, tap into so many different things, my dear. And that's part of my mission. So hopefully I've explained a little more about the why behind it. I'm doing it, like I said, for the me now that needs to step outside of my comfort zone and get past my introverted self and do these podcasts, and to do it for this sweet, poor little, very lost and not understood little girl. I'm doing that because that's my inner child. And so that's the work I'm doing for me, but I want to help you with this, because the more of us beautiful souls that get to embrace who we are fully in here and let that light soul energy shine from here out, that's how we raise the vibration on this planet. That's how we start doing a big healing that we really need to have. There is a lot of things that are going on, especially out in the media and stuff right now. There is so much chaos that there is a lot of incredible change that needs to happen. But when you have deep change that needs to happen, you need to clear it all out. You can't just sweep things under the rug or put another coat of paint on. There's a lot of things that are going on, and there's a lot of things outside of us that we don't have any sway, or any of these things. But the more you are connected with what's going on with your heart space, the more you're able to attune with what's going on here and empower you with the things you do have a say-so over and control of, which is what's going on with you, my dear. And that's my why. So hopefully I will see you again. So like I said, if this is the first video you're seeing, there's a couple before this. There's one that I talk about my story. I tell you about my first memories when I was 3 years old and things that happened. Then I start talking about my why. And that's in this one. So there's 3, this is the 3rd video if you're finding these. So go ahead and catch the other ones and go on back. And another thing too, and I try to remember to say this in every one of them, I do read the comments. So please, if you have questions that you want to see in future episodes, if there's something I talked about that you want to know more about, write it in the comments. I am so excited to see what people have to say and to share, please, or share your stories. If you had experiences where maybe you were drawing things when you were little about a life that you remembered you just were like afraid to talk about, share it. Please share it, because the more we share, the more people realize that this is a lot more common than people really think it is, and that it's not odd and silly, that it is part of our soul path. And what can I say? It's a beautiful thing. Oh, and just a little side note too, I use the word path. One of the biggest questions I have is a lot of people asking me, am I on my path? Am I on my right path? Any of these things. Well, I want to tell you right now, when I did a little deep channeling with my guys, this is, well, what do I say when people ask me this so much? Because I've always felt that it wasn't about finding the right path, that I always felt like I was just taking different turns. And one of the things that came through very clearly from my angels was to say, you are your path. So if you keep looking for your path, am I on the right path? Am I doing, am I choosing the right path? Do I need to choose my path? All of these, you are your path. Your life story is your path. And the most beautiful part about this is you are in the driver's seat, my dear. And that's one of the things we're going to do on this. We're going to kind of go do a field trip through the universe, energetically and many other ways. And so I'm so happy to see you, and I hope to see you in coming episodes. And also I will be doing live events in this. So if this was really interesting to you and you would love to do this, go ahead and go up and subscribe to this YouTube channel, because I think I have to have at least 50 to be able to do live events, because I'm going to start doing live workshops and a lot of live Q&A sessions that I'm going to be able to do here that I'm not going to be doing on my TikTok. My TikTok channel, there should be a link in here down below. You can go to that too. That's the channel that I will be doing, that I do all of my live readings. So if you show up during one of my live events, you can go ahead and get a personal reading during those events. So other than that, thank you so much for stopping by, and I look forward to this journey with you. So take care of yourself. I'll see you soon. Bye.